Okay, hello, I'm with Ret here. I'm going to do one of my grilled interviews. So how are you doing at the moment, Ret?
Actually pretty good. We're here at home story on the last day. I'm already out of the tournament, so I'm just trying to have fun. I'm kind of tired, but I'm happy to be here as always.
So the first place that people are going to think of your name is obviously your Brood War career, but a lot of people who will be watching this interview only came around in StarCraft 2, so they maybe have heard a little bit about your Brood War career, or they've seen a couple of old interviews. So I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about from that period. Like, the first thing is, when people think of the foreigners in Brood War, they know that, like, you know, no foreigner in the later period could go to Korea and be like super successful, like get into OSLs and all this sort of stuff. And like you and Idra and Noni to some degree tried to do that for a little while at least. Obviously Idra a couple more years. How would you compare in terms of, like, contrast it to StarCraft 2 for me? Like, realistically, where were like the top foreigners in Brood War? What kind of level would they be at compared to like StarCraft 2? Like, what type of people could you give an example of to give it like a reference point?
I think the very best foreigners were probably compared to GSL, so maybe low code A, high code B even. Like in StarCraft 1, when a foreigner played a Korean, you almost knew for sure that the Korean would win. But in StarCraft 2, anything can happen, and a lot of foreign players are able to beat Koreans, so you really can't compare it. Like, even if the StarCraft scene was as big for StarCraft 1 outside of Korea than it is now for StarCraft 2, foreigners just wouldn't have stood a chance.
Since, like, I mentioned the three most famous names in the latter period who went to Korea and gave it a shot. Like, Idra kind of like went the most hardcore and he got onto like the B team of CJ, I think it was. You and Noni had like a short period where you were there trying to go through the Courage tournaments. So it always means that people wonder, well, what about some of the other foreigner names? Like, how could they have done? And so I had two names that came to mind where I wondered what your opinion would be. Like, these guys, as far as I know, didn't want to go to Korea, but if we imagine if Mondragon or Testie could have gone and they could have like tried to become pros or tried to play the Courage tournaments, like, would they have had similar results to you guys? Like, what's your sense of how they would have done?
It's of course like super hard to say, but I think Mondragon was probably the most dominant player in any era in StarCraft 1, so if anything, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe he could have qualified for an OSL or something like this, or maybe, you know, just, you know, skill-wise be on the same level as some of the Koreans. But yeah, he was probably the greatest foreigner of all time in StarCraft 1. Testie, I'm not sure about because he was such a weird player. He always played kind of unstandard and got wins like that, and he played random a lot, so if he like dedicated himself to one race and actually learning the basics to the max, maybe, but I think Testie not really. Mondragon maybe.
When you first went to Korea and had your period there, like, for the first part, it seemed like not such a great period in your life because the idea was like, I'm going to go and do like this thing that I've dreamed of doing. Then you had all these problems with like the East Straw House, like not being able to get practice, eventually having to leave. But then it kind of ended on a positive note because you had this nice run through the Courage tournament. If you look back now, how do you weigh up like the positives and negative? Like, do you feel like it was there any degree to where it was like a disappointment, or was it like good as an experience? How do you think of it now?
Well, back then it felt like it was my only chance to be a pro, so back then I took it pretty to heart that I didn't make it, because, you know, going to Korea in those days was like a unique opportunity that not many people even got, even if they were really good. So it was a disappointment at the time, but also I learned a lot there. Koreans are very judgmental when it comes to the way someone presents himself physically. So at the time I was really overweight. And when Koreans see you the first time, that's what they think, like, oh, you're a fat guy, so you're lazy, or, you know, you should. And then after that, I realized that, and actually lost a lot of weight immediately after returning from Korea. So personally, it was definitely a great learning experience. Now overall, in the grand scheme of things, it was such a small period over such a much longer career that I'm not really disappointed about it. I'm just happy I tried it. And it could have gone better, but I tried my best, and it was fun. I lived with Artosis. It was different days. I mean, nobody was like famous yet or anything, so we actually lived in like a really, like, as big as this room pretty much, like 2 by 2, with like a kitchen, and we had a good time.
from talking to other people who've been to the Korean scene who are foreigners or like are insiders, I've heard it said that one of the biggest problems is even once you could get into a team house, like other people had the same problem you had. Like it's very hard to get them to like bring you into their team system of like the hierarchy and like give you practice games or give you like coaching attention, because people say like the problem is it's almost like you have to, they won't adapt to you, you have to like completely adapt to them, like accept everything about their culture, like the way that the whole system works with like people who are older than you and all this things that can be quite strange to a foreigner, it seems. The reason it interested me as a topic is because I've actually heard that there's a similar problem in StarCraft 2 to some degree. So when you get like a single foreigner who doesn't have like a team partnership or anything and he goes to a foreign team house in Korea, some of them have told me like they just end up sitting playing on the ladder all day. Like every now and then they can get the odd custom with someone, but just because they're in a house doesn't mean that like people on Reddit are going to assume if someone goes to that house, oh, he's playing with the best players all the time, he's doing customs, like he's going to be so good. But it seems like it's not necessarily the case. Like, was this the experience of how you found it, like trying to get in those team houses?
For StarCraft 1, definitely there was a huge hierarchy. There were older players and players who'd been on the team longer. Then there were the up-and-coming players who were kind of like helping the traditionally like strong players on the team, and then there was basically the nobodies, which I was one of. And yeah, they either played with each other, the Koreans did, or they played ladder or ICUP, and you know they were used like to do chores around the house and stuff like this. So obviously Korean culture is very different from Western culture. I definitely feel like now Koreans are more open to the foreign scene, and they keep learning. So I think the atmosphere in team houses now is probably still a lot better, but you know, getting games with people in houses is purely a social thing. It doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter what you have coming up. If you get along with someone, they will help you, and if you don't, then they're not gonna be like, hey, you wanna play? So it's really a social thing, and I think nowadays people are able to get customs. Like I remember in the TL OGS house, when Jinro made his GSL runs, he would play with them all the time in custom games. So I think it's getting better. Obviously some people have more problems than others. The people that are like really open or well liked, they're more likely to get support. I think Sasa, for example, has people play with him, and every time I see him with TSL, they seem to get along really well. So I think it's different for everyone, but overall it's getting better.
Okay, so what that makes me think of now actually is an interesting thing. I have never heard anyone put this theory forwards about why the Korean players in general are like so mentally strong, is if we look at like the best foreign players and the best Korean players, like skill-wise, I'm sure there's parallels. Like I'm sure there's someone who's got just as good control in the West who's some amazing Korean guy. It's not like he's just born way better, but it seems like the way you're describing the team structure there, I mean, it is quite rigid. Like you start off as a practice partner and you're basically like there just to like sort of be like a punching bag for the better player almost, or you're hoping to get some games with him. And so what people don't necessarily realize in the West, I think, is that you literally, just to even become an A-team player in a pro house, and to some degree even in StarCraft 2 this is true, you have to sort of like keep proving yourself and working your way up through like a really like cutthroat, like there's a whole lot of people competing for that position. You can always think of it like one of these shows like The Apprentice or something. Every level, people are getting dropped out and maybe you go on, but then there's another challenge at the next one. So before in the West, we ever hear of a Korean guy, like a big name guy, he's already sort of like battle tested like that. Like you'd have to be a pretty tough guy just to get through that mentally. Whereas in the West, in theory, you could just be really good on the ladder, you could do well in some online cups, you could maybe have 1 or 2 runs, but you never maybe have necessarily like got all that mental fortitude. That might be something you have to work on after you've become a pro. Is this true to any degree?
Yeah, I think it's in a Korean house, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, you could be doing really well for 6 months, but there's a hierarchy. So even if you're doing better than someone, they might just have more credit from the past, and you're not going to get that shot. And in Korea, it's very hard to get a shot, or it used to be, because there was only GSL. So it was like the qualifiers, and then they're so hard to get through, and it's only to get to Code A, which if you play Code A, that's not like playing for all the fans and stuff. So, I mean, Hero, before he joined Team Liquid, he was always practicing in OGS, more than most, and he was actually, they were thinking about kicking him from the team, or letting him go home for a bit, because he didn't qualify for GSL a couple times, and he was doing great in custom games. So now Hero is one of the most winningest Protoss players in the world, and you would think that he was just born like really skilled, but he's actually done years and years and years of like lowly training in these team houses, also in StarCraft 1, where I feel like the Korean players are all so good. It's just like some of them have like maybe an amount of luck at a certain point, and then they start believing in themselves more, and then they have also like years and years of like super competitive tournaments. So even if you just play the qualifiers for GSL every month, then you're going to learn to deal with like those situations where you have to deliver. It's so important to them, and like the difference, like someone could be as good as someone else, but if they get an unlucky break in one GSL qualifier, then maybe they never get to show their skill. So it's really, I think the Korean environment definitely teaches you a lot of mental strength, and the ones that don't have it, they just give up early.
Because an area where it is really obvious is GSL, like you say, because to even get out of like, get into Code A, and that's just to get into Code A, then to get into Code S, it seems like a huge grind because it takes a whole month to do it. You might have to play like 4 or 5 people in a row and practice for that one guy. And so I noticed actually, you were mentioning there the Liquid players who didn't have that much individual success, then kind of came over to Liquid, had success in foreign tournaments, and then that sort of translated back into GSL. I've noticed that's happened a bunch of times. Like good examples would be, let me think, MMA. I think he was just like a team player, and then he like won an MLG, then he came back and suddenly he was doing good in the GSL. I think Dongre-gu had a similar scenario. Some of these players couldn't even qualify for Code S. They got the direct spots because they did well in the foreign tournaments. And if you think about it, in the foreign tournament, it's basically more about like how good you are, just skills, because you don't know who you're going to play in 3 hours from now. The tournament lasts maybe 2 days, 3 days, so you just have to be on for a day and a half possibly, and you could do really well. Do you think this kind of like sums up, like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. It's sort of like the Koreans have to get to like a certain level for it to show in GSL, like you have to definitely be at this level, whereas in the West, you have to sort of like be able to show your skills for a couple of days. How do you think this is like, how do you think it works out?
Yeah, I think it's very hard. Just being a foreign player is so much better than being a Korean player. It's just so much harder, and I think you just need luck there as well, because there's 10 guys who are as good as you, or at least can beat you at any given moment, and you have to make it through all of them, and you have to make such a long road. For example, Puma won NASL twice and won IEM and stuff like that, and I don't think he's ever qualified for Code A, which is just absolutely insane because he's such a good player. But it just goes to show that, you know, in this game and maybe in most games, if something doesn't go your way, you can lose, even to someone worse than you. And if this keeps happening over and over, then it's going to become something in your head as well. Like, and it just becomes harder and harder, and then you just need that lucky break, and then you start flying, sort of.
I mean, to do it from the other way around, so the foreigners who've had success in foreign tournaments and they all go to Korea, I get the sense before they go there, even though they've seen other people go before them and like losing Code A, they're thinking to themselves like, nah, that won't happen to me though. You know, like I beat that Korean guy when I was at MLG or DreamHack or something. They all go there, and the story's pretty much always the same. The first 2 months they get destroyed. Maybe if they stick around like Naniwa for like 6 months or more, Hawk, eventually they can get some Code S placements, or they can start to do well. How would you I know you didn't do like a whole lot of GSL, but how would you explain the difference between just playing a foreign tournament, even one with all the big names in, like big name Koreans, and then trying to get into like Code S, Code A, etc., where you know in advance, like in a week from now, I have to play this one guy and I have to beat that guy?
Yeah, that's definitely different. I mean, when that one guy, he also knows he's going to play you in a week, so you have like a week with your whole team, talk with your friends, you know, change builds, do something unexpected. And I feel like there's so much mind games going on in those kind of matchups also, where, you know, people just prepare very specific things for you, maybe research you a lot, and that just makes it, that it just adds like another element to the game, which is actually like the coaching, analyzing, picking strategies part, which at MLG and GSL everybody just plays kind of like how they play ladder, because it's kind of comparable. So Personally, I'm not sure which one's harder, to be honest, because obviously 1 week more of preparation helps you as well. I guess it just depends what kind of player you are. Like really creative people could probably come up with really good stuff for just one matchup. and then the more like all-round players are better off like playing MLG or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely different, but it's just something that if you're a pro gamer nowadays, you have to learn how to play each thing if you want to be successful in all of them. Different people definitely excel in different tournaments.
Okay, so another interesting thing that I don't hear mentioned very often is that when the Korean players go to foreign tournaments, I've noticed, and from talking to people, they have this thing where like by default they have like Korean pride. So like even people who aren't in the same team, and you wouldn't expect like these guys are necessarily even friends, when they're at the foreign tournament, all the Koreans sort of hang around together, and if there's only 3 of them, they'll all for sure be talking the whole time. And it seems like, I get the impression that they actually like help each other out. Like if someone's coming up in a match, they'll say like, oh, I played him like another tournament, he does this sort of style or something. And so they almost have like a pooled knowledge base of like who they're going to play and sort of helping each other out to some degree. I don't know how much it is, like I'm guessing it's different depending on the players, but with the foreigners that's pretty much almost non-existent. Like if people are actually friends, they'll do that, or if they're in the same team, they'll do it. But I know examples where people are both, and it's not even that they're just from the same country, because I know people who are like top Swedish players who hate each other and actually want each other to lose. I know 2 players who are the best players in Poland who hate each other, they want each other to lose. So is there a degree to which that's something that also maybe holds foreigners back? Like they don't even root for each other almost and don't help each other out? Is that even a factor?
I think there's definitely more of a like grudge between like the foreign players. The Korean players seem to just like kind of follow the whole, all the other ones, and the older ones they lead, and people are more subordinate. That's a word.
Subordinate?
Subordinate. But yeah, the foreign players, they all have big egos because they're all stars, even if they're not as good as the Korean ones. So there's a lot more trash talk going on. But from my experience, people still help each other. But you're right, you have to be friends. So I try to help my friends out if I know anything, but it's never like... I don't think Grubby's ever came up to me, for example, and told me, hey, this guy plays like this, you should try this. But it just depends on who you're friends with, really. But there's definitely too much hate in foreign StarCraft.
Okay, before I forget this, I wanted to actually ask something. I read that you're colorblind. So are you like totally colorblind? Do you have like what specific, like the 2 types it normally is like there's red-green or there's blue-yellow? Like what type do you have?
Pretty sure it's red-green. Honestly, I don't really notice it that much. I don't think it's a huge deal, but in StarCraft 1 it was a bit harder to see things on the minimap. On StarCraft 2 it's not, but I still miss things on the minimap, so maybe it wasn't even that big of a problem in StarCraft 1, I'm just really bad at looking at it.
Is it not a problem playing Zerg then as a result, since there's so much red?
No, I don't think I have any real problems. I always use the green and red color, like I'm green and opponent's red, so I don't think it affects me too much.
When we think about your career in StarCraft 2, you had this run where you won Assembly Winter. This is very early on. This is like February 2011. So at that period, people were saying like, oh, you might be the best European player. And then you basically had like a couple of months where you had like, you'd have a couple of tournaments that weren't so good. Then you'd have like 1 or 2 like good results, like make a semi-final or do good in like a tournament that's like a medium-sized tournament. And it would keep going like this, like sort of like spiking graph like this. It seems like from when I've looked at your other interviews, like in your life in general, you've always been aware that there's been like a consistency problem for you, or maybe like motivation cycles. Like you get really, really motivated for 3 months and then it drops off for a while and then you go, right, I'm gonna do it again for 3, but it's like you can't maintain the momentum. Is this fair?
I think it's fair to say that I definitely haven't had an ideal, I haven't really felt like I've put in everything to make the most out of what I could have done. But yeah, I have done well early in 2010, then done well in 2012, and done bad in between. So it's always going up and down with me. Right now I'm pretty much on a low, so I'm hoping that the cycle continues and I can do better again. But I think it's something that just has to do with routine in your life, because for a long time I was like living either in America or home and then traveling a lot, and a lot of things weren't really like calm in my life. So right now I just moved into my own place, which took about a month to set everything up, so a lot of work, but I think in the end it's going to help me because I won't be all over the place anymore. I'll always have like the same daily schedule where I can really start to do things the right way and start getting solid practice, and I've been doing that for a while now, so I'm hoping that it will get a lot better in 2013 very soon.
I mean, is it fair to say though, like this? I mean, from when I tried to look at like your whole career in this sense, I almost got the sense that this wasn't even necessarily like a StarCraft issue. It was like what you're saying there. It's more like a self-discipline issue. Well, in terms of just lifestyle issues, then I know you've had times when you wanted to quit smoking, like you didn't. That wasn't something that you thought you should have in your life anymore. There were times when you said like that you had an ideal like weight or body shape that you wanted to get back to. And so you obviously have these particular goals in mind, like I want to get back to this place, but you haven't necessarily been able to like discipline yourself to that degree. I mean, we could say the same thing in StarCraft. So the reason why I ask is because, do you think it's an issue that, like as a person, you're just not someone who's like consistent motivation? Are you someone where you have to like build yourself up to something, like I'm going to do this and rev yourself up like that? Because, I mean, there's obviously other people who are just like driven the whole time. They're just like, I mean, I think of someone like Naniwa, even when they're not doing that well, they're constantly just going for it. Is this something? Because the reason I ask is because since you were like a Brood War pro, a foreign Brood War pro, that didn't like demand that people practiced all the time. It was a degree to which you could play games like they're meant for fun. You can just play for fun, and if you're good as well, great, that syncs up and you can have some tournament success. But in StarCraft 2, when you're trying to compete against Koreans and even the top foreigners, some of them are very driven. So do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, well, it's definitely something that, you know, I'm 27 now, so again, I definitely had quite a life already, and there were times where I weighed like 140 kilograms, or I was in really good shape and looking muscular, so it's definitely something that, you know, in almost every aspect of my life it comes back. Like if I'm doing really well, where eating is concerned or playing StarCraft is concerned, then I can keep it up. But then if one of those elements like drops off, I'll start feeling bad about it, and then it like, instead of pushing me back, it's like this dangerous trap where I can fall in, where I'm not doing the things I should be doing. But yeah, this is something I've definitely realized, and I'm constantly trying to, you know, I wake up every day, I go to the store and I buy just healthy food, and then I start up StarCraft. And then by the end of the night, if I can keep it up, I can do it again the next day. But then I have weak moments where I will just stop caring, or just not doing everything perfectly. But it's just, I think I just gotta keep trying. I can't really like accept that as a part of my personality because I want to be successful. So all I can say is that I just haven't tried enough in the past, and I'll keep trying. And well, I feel like now with my own place and everything, I get the routine where I go to the same store every day, so I can really like control what I eat, and I know how long I'll be gone and how long I can play, and when my friends are coming or when I have to do something. So I think that now consistency should be easier to achieve now that I'm in like one place for long periods of time, and I hope so.
Because I mean, to go back again, so I mentioned like the early period in 2011, mainly like the first sort of 7-8 months, you had like some good results, some good runs of results as well, making it deep into tournaments. Then for the rest of 2011, like results wise, there's not really much to talk about on a positive note, it seems.
I made put for DreamHack Winter at the end of 2011.
Ah, okay, at the end, okay. Okay, actually.
I won the Invitational in August.
August?
So it was like February, August, December. So it's weird. It's just like sometimes, like the mechanics are always there, I feel. Maybe more so then than now, I'm not really sure. But for me, it's like if something clicks, like I will just have problems with a certain matchup or something, and then I realize like a small thing, and then everything makes sense, and then I can do really well for 3 weeks, a month before something changes again. And then I either get it really fast or it takes me a little bit longer. But I definitely recognize moments in my overall career where I had like kind of like, oh yeah, that's how I do that. And then I started doing that consistently. The biggest example was like, I think June 2011, I played MLG, and I lost a few games, and I was like, man, I should link counter more often. And then 1 month later, I won the European BlizzCon with basically just link counters. So I have those moments where I realize something is really good, and then I can play it really well, and then that gets figures out, and I kind of am lost. Like, you can tell when I'm playing that I don't really believe in something, but when I really believe in something, then I can do it like to perfection. But if I'm unconfident or unsure of what to do, then you can see in my play I'm just making like very insecure moves and things like that. Like when I played StarCraft Boot War, there was always like a Korean player to watch, and you could just follow his game plan, and you knew exactly if I do this, if I make these 5 steps, I can win. If I have like a 5-step plan in a game where I know I'll win, then I can do those to perfection. But if it's like 3 steps and then you might win or you might not win, not really sure why, or why some games go certain ways, then I become like more uncertain, and my moves will become less effective as well.
Actually, to go on with that same topic there, you're mentioning like sometimes with a specific race you have problems, or like it's kind of like your variable as to how you're doing against it. That reminds me of something that I wanted to mention, which was that okay, so you had this period in 2012 where in the space of a couple of months you were doing like really well against Protoss. Like that Red Bull LAN, you beat Protosses the whole way. And what else was it? Okay, NASL 3 as well. You beat a bunch of Protoss, but then you lost to MC in these 2 best-of-5 series. So if you can beat people like Alicia, you can beat Genius, Puzzle, these guys. Like, was there something specific about MC as a player, or like, what do you think it was about that?
Well, I've known and played MC for such a long time, and I don't think I beat him like once or twice, but he beat me like 10 times. So whenever I play MC, I feel like, wow, it's MC. You know, this stuff I'm doing, it's not going to be enough for MC, so it becomes also a harder matchup for me with certain players like Alicia and Puzzle. I don't really know them as well. I respect them, but like MC, it's like, wow, it's MC because he was so successful. So it's harder to play against him for me. Also because we used to be in LGS together, so he knows so much about me. And early on in StarCraft 2, MC would like watch my games and then try to tell me why I lost and stuff like this. So it's kind of like a relationship where we both acknowledge that he's better than me. So it becomes hard to like play that person and then try to think of ways where you can definitely beat MC. Like, even though there are ways where you can definitely beat MC, because he lost a lot of series against Zerg. If I don't believe in that in my head, then I can't do it. So then it just becomes like this mix of like mechanics and stuff that sort of works, but it's not enough for those kind of matches. So it's another mental thing about StarCraft. I think a lot of people have certain players they'd rather not face for whatever reason, and then when they do, they play worse than they should. So I think MC is probably one of those guys for me.
Is there a tournament in your career when you think back from StarCraft 2 where it feels like that was where you were at your peak, like everything was working, the matchups were all going well? Like, is there something that comes to mind, like somewhere you're trying to get back to when you think of that?
I think the BlizzCon Invitational, I definitely showed, for the time being at least, some of the best Zerg I've showed.
This is the European one?
The European one, yeah. And then, actually at NASL Season 3 I was playing really well in practice, and I played a lot with Hero and MC in practice games, and I was doing really well there. And yeah, after that, I haven't really played well since then. So I would still go for the BlizzCon European, because that's where like kind of everything came together at that time. And yeah, I was doing link counters so well. So it's because I like had this this thought where like I saw the awesomeness of it if it was done right, and then I started doing it really well. So I think, yeah, I'm most proud of that tournament for sure.
Okay. When I look at your results myself, like I'm looking at who you're getting eliminated by in different tournaments throughout your career, and then also seeing like other people's opinions on forums, like about you as a player. I get the sense, and other people agree with this, that it seems like you're a player where people have always held you up that of the foreigners, you're one of the guys who could have beat like a good Korean guy if you face him. Like you can beat him in the tournament. You can beat players who on paper should be maybe better than you because of their accomplishments. But then you're also the guy that in the very same tournament, maybe even the next round, can then lose to a guy who should be even lower than you on the rankings, if you know what I mean. Do you get this sense about yourself? Like, is this an issue for you?
I don't really think about who I'm playing, but I definitely have like this aspect of retardedness in my play sometimes. Like I can do everything really well and get myself in an awesome position, and then I'll just like I have that series where I was sitting there, it was like 1-1 last game or something, and I was like thinking to myself, oh my god, I'm winning, and then this feeling becomes so overwhelming that you become so impatient, and that's something I really like. Patience is so hard for me in StarCraft because I just want to attack and end it. Like I want this game to be over and I want to be happy about winning. And then there's so many times where that backfired and I actually threw it away, and then I was really sad about losing. So yeah, that's just a mental thing for me. I think like I can play some amazing game and like compete with maybe some of the best in the world, and I can lose to anyone on the ladder or where I'm trying just as hard. But I just have these moments of stupidity sometimes, or impatience, whatever it is. But my decision making is definitely not my strongest point.
That immediately brings to mind a specific game that I actually want to ask you about. Exactly what you're describing there was this game that you played at WCS Europe, and it was the deciding map against Grubby in the lower bracket. Because people have told me, like even the players at that tournament, people have said like, I thought like Grubby had like less than 1% chance to win at that point. Like he was like dead for all practical intents and purposes. Like describe like the situation that was happening in the game. Like what was the like units versus what? Like and how did this game go to Grubby? Like was it really that he did something crazy and amazing? Did you just blow it? What do you think?
Well, the game started out very poorly for me. I opened up with an 8 pool and he just perfect blocked it. So I was just trying to hang in there, trying to get back to the game. But the whole game he was like moving on the map and I was just defending, getting brute lords. So I kind of didn't really realize like the position in the game for both of us. Like when I play hero or someone or like someone like that and I have a game like this, they always get the mothership faster and I'm more behind and stuff like this. So I was just hoping to survive, and then I finally got to the point where I attacked, and I didn't expect it at all, but he just went for a base race immediately. And I had actually never played base races before. Like when I play ladder, I either win like convincingly in 20 minutes or I lose. I rarely ever have these games, like no matter if I play 30 games a day, I don't have games that go an hour and require like your full attention the whole way. So this is something that if it happens in a tournament, it'll be my first time. Or it was my first time actually a base race, even though I played StarCraft 2 for 2 years with these kind of armies. It was like, I lost a lot. I was like 20 Brute Lords, maybe 10 Corruptors and 8 Infestors. So it was on Entombed Valley, so I went and attacked. He was on the top left, so I attacked his 4th, and he just went down to my 4th. And then I just kept attacking. I was like, I should have brought all my spines with me, then I could have never lost this game. But it ended up me attacking his main base, and then he was killing all my buildings. I was making hatcheries at his 3rd base. And then I had drones under my army and like 1,100 minerals. So I was just trying to clear up buildings so I could make more hatcheries under my army. And he had a mothership hidden or stuck in the top left corner. It like didn't get to his army. So I would have been able to just kill that with Corruptors and then use the Brute Lords to just kill his ground army. So if I don't lose my buildings there, I think there's no way I could have lost. But to my surprise, well, he actually came up the ramp, and instead of just fighting me, he went for the hatcheries that were building. There were like 3 of them building. So then I lost. I just like saw the defeat screen. It was actually probably one of the most painful losses in my career for sure. Yeah, I should have never lost this game, and if I had played more base races, like if I played the same game today, I would not lose. But at that time, I just wasn't ready. I wasn't sure. I didn't have those steps in my head, you know, the ones I talked about, what to do to win, which is just bring your spine crawlers and leave them in your army. I also had a lot of Brute Lord games where I actually lost to Vortex, like maybe more so than other Zergs. So I was never that confident. Like I know my army can probably die. Like if Stephano was using it or something, it wouldn't die. But I have died with this army, so I thought he would just fight me, and then we'll see. But yeah, that was a game I should never have lost.
In terms of your overall style at StarCraft 2, you're obviously very famous for liking to play macro games and liking to. You basically like it if the opponent just sits back and he builds up his arm and you build up yours. Like you are comfortable in these engagements. It sounds like. And from listening to like your interviews when you say about how much practice you've had before an event, it sounds like you're someone who your confidence is like built on how much good practice you feel like you've got in, how much preparation. Do you feel like are you a versatile player? Like, can you mix it up very well? Can you do things that aren't like within your normal wheelhouse or your style? Do you suffer at all from being kind of like one approach to the game and other people know what you're going to do?
I think that I definitely have a tendency to play macro, but I can do other things. Like I have 8 pooled in this tournament, and I 6 pooled at MLG against Ganji, and I do roach attacks sometimes. Like I try to mix it up, but of course, like in the end, you're gonna stick to what you're most comfortable with most of the time. I think it was more an issue like last year or something, like when I was doing only macro games. I think nowadays people aren't as scared to go macro game with me, so it's less of an issue. But yeah, the practice thing, I always, like, if I face an opponent, I think about how much did he practice and how much did I practice, and then I kind of compare, and then in my head it's like, okay, you have this much chance to win, which is like completely arbitrary and sometimes really stupid. Because like sometimes I'll play games and I'll be like, wow, this guy just went to Korea for 4 months, you know, he played ladder all day, he's going to be really good, I'm going to have to do something weird. And then I look back at the replay and it's not true at all, like I could have just won a standard game. So I try to think less and less about that, but it's something that I always like consider when I play against someone who I know, you know, has just been practicing the same as me or less. Then I feel like, yeah, no problem, and I won't worry. But when I play someone who just went to Korea or something like this, then I always worry too much, and it ends up sometimes changing my play for the worse.
If we look at the period before the so-called Zerg era, when people have been complaining about imbalance and the infestor and all the rest of it, and if we put that time at like around like the end of 2011 coming into 2012, you were one of the few foreign Zergs who actually could have like really solid results or really good results. Because obviously some Koreans could, but like the foreigners especially, it seemed like a lot of the Zergs had a lot of problems. What would you put down as the factors as to how, during the time when it should have been the hardest for Zerg, you were having your best results, and then in the so-called Zerg era, when you get all the so-called patch Zergs, like people who are kind of mediocre, having some good results every now and then, your results have kind of been not as good. Is there any correlation between these two things? Are there any factors?
I think back then the playstyles that Zergs were using, I played a lot different. Like I was using Mutilating Bane and ZVT, trying to do a lot of multi-harass and using like Brood War type styles to win these games. And then all the Zergs started winning with like Infestors and Brood Lords and just defending. And then for like Zergs like me, it's like, well, these guys, they're not doing anything and they're winning, so I should try this. But then I kind of lost my multitasking, like even just like the focus on winning through means that are like that and not just Brood Lord Infestor. And then it became like harder, like, because I wasn't like, I've never been the best with like Infestors, but I saw other Zergs winning all the time, doing nothing and like making it look so easy. So I was like, how should I play then? Like, I've been playing a certain way for such a long time, with just like attacking and multitasking and macroing, and then all these people are winning with just sitting there with Infestors and Brood Lords. So of course I wanted to win also, so I kind of started switching it up. And I think I've lost some of my unique, you know, skills that make me like a dangerous player, maybe because of it. And I still haven't really mastered the imbus style, so that's why my results actually after the patch have just been like way worse compared to like everyone else. So I'm like the anti-patch Zerg.
Has it been at all discouraging for you in a sense that some of these players who, I mean, even now people would say some of the Zergs that have had a couple of good results aren't so good, and yet sort of like in this era they've been able to do more while you've been kind of like trying to figure out your style and like figuring out what will work for you? I mean, is it at all discouraging that now it's not even like you can't say it's the race that's holding me back now?
I feel like the way that Zerg are winning now, or winning a lot of the times, they just have to be good at fungals and infestarians and spreading their Brood Lords, which are very specific skills. Like the macro to get to an economy, to be able to do that is very easy. So it kind of makes the game more simple. Like a year ago, I was always thinking about where can I attack, like when should I move with a counter, or where should I set up my army, or things like this. And now it's more like when do I have 20 boot loops so I can just go. And the game becomes a lot more still and slower. I think a lot of people also have complained about StarCraft 2 not being as fun to watch because of it. So for me personally it's bad, and for the game it's bad. And I really hope with Heart of the Swarm we can go back to like a more dynamic feeling to playing the game, because I think it's more fun.
Thinking back to that pre-patch era, people would always cite you as someone who's like one of the most skilled foreigners, the most talented. They always use phrases like this. They weren't never going to say you the most accomplished, but they'd say like talent-wise you were up there, etc. I did an interview with MrBitter at the beginning of 2012, and he actually said that you're the most talented StarCraft 2 player in the whole world, and he was even including Koreans. I mean, I realised MrBitter's like a huge foreign Zerg homer, but even so he has a very, very high opinion of your ability level. How on point are these comments? Like, do you feel this yourself? Like you have all this potential that you've never been able to show, or have you shown it at times? Like, what do you think it is?
When I look at my overall results, I definitely feel like I didn't show what I could have shown. But things like statements like the most talented player in the world, that's like complete crap. So I think I probably am just good at certain things that are in this game, and then worse at others. And maybe some of my abilities like are one of the best in the game.
So what stands out when you say that? What's coming to mind?
I think I definitely benefited more when I played more like a multitask style, like when I think about it. Nowadays, if you watch me play, I'll just be like any other Zerg, trying to get infestors and brute lords, and then it usually ends worse than other Zergs. So, but yeah, I really feel like I was just a better brute war player probably than a StarCraft 2 player.
So since we've talked about like your period before the patch, and then we talked about like the patch Zerg to some degree, I want to ask now about Stephano, because he's the guy who before anyone knew about the Zerg era, he was actually managing to like outright win tournaments and like beat these huge players. So as a fellow Zerg player, like what do you think was so special about Stephano, and is there some merit to people saying that everyone just kind of copied his style after he found success with it?
I think for a while there, everyone was trying to like copy his style, because when you watch Stephano games, a lot of the time it's just like, how did he win that? It's like all these Zergs are just like in the same position and they always lose, and then Stephano somehow wins the battle because he was one of the first that like always consistently very well planned like the way he was going to attack and where and from how many sides, and he always has like the best engagements. And for a while I didn't realize this, so I watched Stephano and just like be asking questions like, what to do, and then I realized like, yeah, okay, it's only about engagements, and Stephano was like the first one to really like maximize his engagements, so that brought him a lot of success. And I don't think you can like say anything about Stephano in the patch, because like, yeah, he was one of the first to play like Zerg in the most winningest, like even if it's considered boring, but he definitely found like the recipe to like win. So I think to be the first one to do that is like requires a huge amount of like talent and like just being intelligent and really planning the way he's going to play games.
Because the thing that's interesting to me to like compare the two of you is that people will always like, the one thing that a player can always say is like, I'm going to practice more. Like that's a good thing to say if like there's problems going on, because it's something he can actually do tomorrow. Whereas like someone like Stephano is probably a good example of someone who doesn't really work that hard compared to some other people, yet still has success. And so I once heard this great quote, this basketball quote, which said like, once you get to the top level where everyone has skill, it's like not a battle of skill, it's like a battle of will. So it's like all mindset. Is this true in StarCraft 2 at all?
I think definitely to some extent. Stephano I've never seen Stephano like unconfident or thinking he couldn't win. I think a lot of the top skilled guys are the same. So maybe it's will, maybe it's something else. I don't really know what it is, but like some people will always do better than others, and you can debate about is their mental strength or the willpower or luck or whatever it is. There's something more than skill definitely to this game.
If you had to pick like a couple of people who maybe they haven't had like the best results, but you always thought like this guy's very, very talented, like he should have better results. Is there someone who comes to mind? Anyone that could be a teammate, someone you've seen in StarCraft 2?
That's a good question.
I mean, you know, people always say about like the practice bourgeois, so you know, in practice they're owning everyone, and especially it's like a Korean thing, it's quite famous.
Well, I think Koss is a good example, and I mean, there's a lot of people where you will think like, oh, this guy should be doing better, but then again, so many people go to ups and downs. It's like, but whenever I play Koss on ladder, I feel like he's so strong, and it's so hard to play him, and then I watch him in tournaments, and he makes like silly mistakes. So I think everyone knows that about him. I feel like right now TLO is playing good enough to, like, he has the skill to win tournaments. He made a round of 8 like a couple times in a row. I really think he will start doing better soon because he's actually playing really well and he has great will, whatever you want to call it. So him right now, and other than that, you know, people do well sometimes, then they do worse. It's normal.
If we, knowing what you know about your current situation now, mistakes you've made in the past, things that have gone well in the past, if you had to project forwards like 6 months, like where do you think Ret should be? Like what do you visualize as like a realistic place you could be?
I just really want to get back to at least my level of results like before NESL this year. I just want to be, I want to practice well and then, you know, have a strong mindset always instead of sometimes. And then I will take it from there. I can't say like I will be the best player in the world or whatever, but I definitely, I just want to get to a level where I'm confident and self-aware of what I can and can't do, and then hopefully just give it my best every game. And I don't want any more games where I feel like I lost because I lost focus or I was impatient or any of these reasons. Because when you lose games because of that, it really hurts. Like if you play your best and you lose, it's like, okay man, you did better. But if you lose because of something you did yourself, which is just like really stupid, then you don't really have anyone else to blame for that. So I really want to avoid that, and I think, of course, I will practice more. I think that's the only way, like, just to get rid of that.
Do you watch GSL much?
I usually catch like most of the Zerg games.
Okay, so for my last question, I want to do like a hypothetical imaginary question. So aliens come to Earth, and it's like a famous question I like to do, but I'll modify it for you though. So aliens come to Earth, and it's sort of like a Space Jam scenario. They say like, we're going to destroy Earth, wipe out the human race, unless like planet Earth can win this game of StarCraft against the aliens. Like obviously the aliens are super good at StarCraft. So they make you the captain of Team Earth. You're going to pick the players that we field from Earth here. And what I want you to do is, the way they're going to set up this exhibition match is they're going to have a foreign Zerg play one matchup. So we're going to have a foreign Zerg in ZVP, foreign Zerg in ZVT, foreign Zerg in ZVZ. And then I want to do the same with the Korean as well. So you're going to pick 6 players for me who you would pick. And obviously the fate of the Earth depends on it. So you need to pick the right guys here. So who would you go for to save Earth?
Against Protoss, definitely Stephano still. I still think he has the best CVP. In ZVZ, it's almost tempting to pick Snoot now since he took out Life and Symbol just recently. His CVZ seems just like really insane right now. He doesn't lose it. And then against Terran, I'll pick Idra because if you didn't have an American on the team, then you wouldn't be Team Earth, right?
Okay. What about Koreans? Give me a Korean for each.
There's so many good Korean Zergs. I'll pick Lenok for Terran. That one I'm sure about.
What reason is there? Something that comes to mind as to why?
I feel he's so good. He always uses bird banelings. His army movement is almost always like just amazing to watch. I feel like all his matchups are good, but his EVT stands out to me. I think he's strongest in that. Is it going to be played online or offline?
Offline, sure.
Offline? Alright, so I shouldn't pick Heon. Because he's an online monster. But against Protoss... It's hard because Donragu is doing worse as well. So I'll pick Live for Protoss because I really like his mouse, like the way he plays. He gets drops, like not many people do that. He just harasses, and he actually managed to like keep that element in his play, unlike me, where he goes for the boot lords, but then still like attacks everywhere, which is really nice to see. And for ZVZ, I'll pick Young Max.
Okay.
Just because I think his ZVZ is awesome. Like he can play on the European server and beat top European Zergs with lag, so that's impressive to me. But I have to say, the Korean, I wouldn't want to pick the Koreans. It's too hard to pick them because there's so many good players.
Okay, so do you have a final message for everyone who watched this? Anyone you say hello to or thank you?
Well, thanks to the sponsors, Razer, Twitch TV, the little app factory, and just recently Barracuda. And of course my team for supporting me, even through like worst days. My friends and family, I guess. All my fans, thank you for watching. And that's it.
Thank you, Val.
I should leave.